Hello, welcome to this episode of Martial Truth Podcast. My interview with Wayne Walker, hypnotist. Okay, you might be saying, Calandra, why are you having a hypnotist on? Well, Wayne's also a practicing martial artist. Started training in martial arts at a very young age. Found out that hypnotism helped him in his martial arts, and now he's gone on to become a licensed hypnotist. He's trained in it. And he's helped people lose weight, stop smoking, face their fears. And we get into some things about some of our martial arts friends using a form of hypnotism to get people to fall for some, let's just say, not real martial arts, okay? Fake martial arts. We'll discuss that. So hope you enjoy it. As usual, please click the like, subscribe. Consider becoming a member, maybe purchase a t-shirt, okay? Share the videos. We really appreciate it, okay? And on to the interview. So Wayne Walker, welcome to the Martial Truth Podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself? I know you're a hypnotist. Reflective Mind Hypnosis is your business, I believe. And why don't you introduce yourself, let everybody know your background, and we'll go from there.
Outstanding. Well, first off, I appreciate you having me on. I really
no
do.
problem.
Hypnosis is my passion in helping people, because I've been doing it for a few years now. But also, I learned hypnosis. I went to school for hypnosis for 2 years with no desire whatsoever of turning it into a business. It just something I found interesting. And the reason I found it interesting is because when I was 17, I'm a martial artist as well. I started martial arts when I was 11 years old. And at 17, I started kickboxing. And this is back in the late 70s. And I was training one night, and my best friend came up to watch me train. And he brought one of his friends who was a psychologist. And after my training, his name was Davis Cox, and he just recently passed away here about a year ago. But he came up to me afterwards and he said, "Hey, you know what? This is really fascinating. You ought to let me hypnotize you." And I kind of went like, "What? Hypno what?" And he goes, "It'll help you a lot." I said, "Okay." Well, at 17 years old, somebody says, "Look, it's going to help you." So, okay, right. I'm good.
Right.
So he spent some time with me, and I spent about 4 sessions with me. He put me in hypnosis, and he had me to the point where when I heard the bell go off to start the fight, I would go into the zone.
Right.
Okay. And I didn't come out of the zone until either I knocked the guy out or the bell rang to end the fight. And I came out of it. And to this day, I don't remember any of my fights.
Okay.
None of it. Okay. But during the late 70s, in the kickboxing arena, there weren't a lot of martial artists doing kickboxing. They were doing point fighting and all of that stuff, which I did.
Right.
And but in that group, we knew each other because we come from different schools and that, and they would, and that type of thing. And one guy came up to me after, he goes, "Dude," he goes, "what was going on with you?" I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Man, you had this look in your eyes, like it was just like," he goes, "I hit you with shit that would knock a bull out." And he said, "You didn't flinch." I go, man, I just, do it." So that experience kind of inspired me to learn about things about the mind. So as I went through my training and owning schools in business and that, I would go to different seminars, Tony Robbins seminars, and different certain personalities and this and the mind and blah, 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 blah. And so fast forward to the late 90s, 1999, I had gone through a divorce, and I moved back to Los Angeles to take over my dad's construction company. And that's what I was going to do. And then I opened up the LA Times one morning, it was Sunday, and had a big 2-page ad there, "Learn how to hypnotize free." And I go, cool. And the school happened to be 15 minutes from where I lived at the time, in an apartment. So I called him on Monday. I scheduled my time. I went down, I took a tour of the school and said, okay, you're signed up for the 2 weeks. You come back to the, so I went through the 2 weeks and had a freaking blast. And then after the 2 weeks, I said, look, this is how we expose you to our school. And that, would you like to? And I go, absolutely. I'm there. So I went to school for 2 years. And during that time, I was still teaching. I was a head instructor for a school there in Westlake, California, which is in the San Fernando Valley. And, or actually it was West Hills. I apologize. And I started working with some of my martial arts friends, the competitors, and hypnotizing, practicing and stuff like that. And it really had an impact on how they approach things. Okay. And, as a martial artist, and again, I started at 11, I, trained in Taekwondo. I got my black belts in that. I got into the Army. I was an all Army karate team. I was part of the team that traveled around and give demonstrations. Army, the old saying back then was Army, be all you can be.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's what we did at high schools and that. But I was also a kickboxer in the military, and I was a light heavyweight kickboxing all Army champion at that time.
Okay.
Inter
Branch.
branch and also different post.
Okay.
I was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay.
It's no longer called Fort Benning now because of all the
War
political
crap. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I was chosen as also to be one of the youngest instructors for the advanced hand-to-hand training that was offered there at Fort Benning, because at Fort Benning, that's a training post,
Right.
and you had all the special forces units coming through and training the Ranger units and all of that. The jump school is there and all of that stuff. So my instructor, the person that was in charge of the martial arts team there on post, his name was Sergeant Major McCall. He was the Sergeant Major of the post for training for the National Guard and the Army Reserve to come in. So he was like the #2 Sergeant Major on post.
Okay.
So they came to him and said, look, we want to revamp our hand-to-hand stuff because it's evolved, back in, and that back in the early 80s, and that was in the early 80s. So I was an instructor for that. And then after I got out of the Army, I moved to Southern California because my dad lived there. He was the vice president of a construction company, and said, hey, and I was going through a divorce then and went there. But my sole goal of going to Los Angeles really was to become a stunt guy.
Okay.
And get into in the movie industry with my martial arts. And I trained with a lot of guys. I trained with, I don't know if you've ever heard of Gene LaBelle.
Sure. Judo Gene LaBelle. Sure.
Judo Gene LaBelle, trained with him. Trained with Benny Urquidez, trained with the Machado brothers.
Yeah, and all these guys. Yeah.
I've trained with a lot of people.
Yeah, I started in 79.
Okay.
So I'm training a long time. So I mean, I'm going into my 46th year in a few months.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
So all the, and even in Texas where I grew up and where I'm at now, and that I trained with Ray McCallum.
Sure. I saw Ray McCallum fight at Madison Square Garden.
There you go.
In New York.
Trained with him. Trained with under Demetrius, the Golden Greek Havanas, before he passed away.
Right.
And then there was Troy Dorsey, who was a kickboxer, and then also a boxer. Yeah. So I know all these guys, but I mean, I was a karate bum.
Right.
Okay. I didn't care what style it was. If they had a fight night and it was open, I was there. I'd drive 2 hours to go to a fight night.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So I didn't care what style. And, in the Army, when I was there, the Sergeant Major McCall, his style was Chinese Goju.
Okay.
And the grandmaster of that branch, if you will, was Grandmaster Ron Van Cleef, the Black Dragon, they called him.
Yeah.
And his sensei was Grandmaster Peter Urban.
Yeah, Peter Urban, sure.
There you go. So you know all these guys.
I know all these guys.
Yeah. So and when I got to Los Angeles and started training, and doing all of these. I did judo, I did jujitsu, I did this, and I did a lot of things.
Yeah. So you were doing
And
cross training.
pretty much,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, pretty much. Okay. And, I was the owner of two different schools, different areas, head instructors, several different schools, and that. Uh, so the whole thing was there as part of who I am.
Right. Right.
Okay. It was my identity.
Right.
It's not something that I did. It's not like playing football during football season. Say, okay, it's over and
Right.
it's done. And that it's part of my identity.
Right.
So fast forward to hypnosis. Went through that, and I was working with my dad's company. And as with family businesses, stuff happens when you get family to working
Right.
together. And it didn't work out the way either one of us wanted to. So I became what they call a catastrophe insurance adjuster.
Okay.
And I was an insurance adjuster for hire. And I traveled around the country, hurricanes and this and blah, 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 blah.
Hmm.
And I had an RV, and that's what I did. But once that storm was over, it was like, okay, I got free time. So I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to be in this area now. I may stay in an area for a couple of months or whatever, or
Right.
that. And I say, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I go, hypnosis. So what I did is I started approaching different organizations like the Knights of Columbus and Rotary clubs, and I would do the comedy hypnosis shows for their
Okay.
charity. And after the event, people would come up to me and they go, "Hey, man, that was the funniest thing. I had this, but you know what? Can you help me with blah 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 blah?" I said, "Sure." And that was where reflective mind hypnosis was born.
So it started as an entertainment idea. You're thinking you're going to do hypnosis to entertain people, make people laugh, have some fun, maybe make a few bucks doing
Right.
that.
Exactly.
And because of that, it leads you down a path of more helping people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And it led me down that path. And the more that I did it, the more that I realized that one, people needed help for their issues. And the issues could be, you probably can't name anything that I haven't dealt with in hypnosis before. And probably the number one, two thing are anxiety and depression
Okay.
that people deal with. And people would approach me and said, "Look, I'm calling you to do hypnosis. I'm not sure if hypnosis is right for me or it can help, but I'm at my wit's end. I've been to the doctor, I've taken the pills that hasn't worked, and this, and I need help." And I would have a short meeting with them because I interview them to make sure that they're the for what I do is going to be able to have an impact on them.
Right.
And I end up telling them that I wish you had started with me first,
Right.
because hypnosis is not rocket science. Hypnosis is not woo-hoo stuff. I'm not a psychic. I'm not
Right.
a warlock or a witch or any
Right.
of that goofy stuff. It's something that I've learned and that I understand, and I understand how the mind works. And I also understand that the average person goes in and out of hypnosis every day anyway, anywhere from 5 to 7 times a day.
I would 100% agree with that because even in my own experience, I've been in a lot of real combat as a police officer.
Right.
And I began to look in myself in my own training. I began to obviously when you're 15, when I started, you're totally about physical, right? Physical, punching harder, kicking faster, the whole 9 yards, right? Then eventually, as I got a little bit older, I started looking at, well, what is the role the mind plays in my training, right? And you're talking about certain things, and one of the things I would do is I would literally sit in a chair and I close my eyes and I'd imagine myself and visualize myself in a real fighting situation.
Mhm.
And it got to the point where as I was doing that, it would feel so real that my heart rate would increase, literally as though I was actually in the fight.
Right.
And I get some of those same reactions that later on when I was in actual combat that you get whether you want them or not. I mean,
Right.
these things that happen with the body are millennia old. The human body's learned to do certain things. If it thinks there's a chance, it can be hurt or cut or killed.
Mhm.
Different chemicals, the way the eyes ability to focus change, the auditory changes. I mean, there's so many things that go on. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And in terms of feeling like it's almost like you go into a self-hypnotic state. Not that that's what you're ever thinking, like, oh, I'm going to put myself in a self-hypnotic state. I think it's
Right.
just something the brain is hardwired to kind of go to help you deal with this life and death situation you're dealing with, you know? And, so you're saying you're helping a lot of people that have depression and anxiety. What are some of the other things? Like, I'm assuming people want to quit smoking.
Quit smoking, lose weight, sleep issues, confidence issues. I mean, it's just fears, phobias, uh, because the subconscious mind, its number one priority is to protect you, and it's
Right.
going to protect you at all cost. But it's going to protect you based on the information that you've pre-programmed with. Now, that pre-programming starts from the time we're born and continues. Now, here's the thing. When we're born and until we're about 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, somewhere around in there, depending on the kid, kids are in a constant state of hypnosis, which means this is they have no critical thinking. They have no critical thought process. And the reason is they can't have that because they have to have imprints upon the subconscious
Right.
mind very quickly. And imprints have to be survival skills, language skills, math skills, all of this information. And it imprints on that subconscious mind. Now, in the perfect world, we would hope that all the imprints that we get at that age are all positive. They're all things that are going to
Right.
help us move forward and make us stronger. But many of those things are how we were raised and the type of caregivers that we have around us, the type of negativity, because the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between positive or negative, truth or lie. It's just information.
Right.
Okay. That is not determined until that information is brought to the conscious mind for the conscious mind to look at it and say, okay, something's happening. Let me think for a second. And it's brought that information, and all of a sudden you go, oh no, hell no. Or, oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Because you cycle through it.
Right.
Okay. Now, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it. Now, when kids hit that 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, that critical veil or that conscious veil comes down, and that becomes the filter to protect the subconscious mind.
Right.
And no imprint will get past that
Right.
at that time. Now, can an imprint occur? Absolutely. But that veil has to be raised. So,
Right.
how is the veil raised? The veil is raised by trauma, by high emotional states, or it's raised by a person such as myself as a hypnotist that raises that veil in order to make those imprints.
Okay.
Now, in this, we have another thing called the primitive mind. Primitive mind is the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. And as a police officer, okay, when a person gets to that point, and it's different for everybody, and they hit that state, they're not thinking. They are
Yeah.
reacting. They are
I
fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah, I call it the reptile brain, right?
Same
Death,
thing.
right.
Same thing.
And
Right.
and again, having all the experience I had, I watched police officers freeze in high stress situations. I watched guys, go right to work and deal with whatever it was. Um, I watched guys hesitate. I mean, I watched guys avoid situations at all cost. So
Mhm.
so it's interesting. One of the things I jokingly say was people say to me, So what's the secret to self-defense? And my standard response is a very simple one. The secret to self-defense is, are you willing to take your fingers and stick them in somebody else's eyeballs?
Right.
And again, like I would have police officers see me do that to someone, had to do it, right? And say to me afterwards, I could never do that. So you're talking about these things that imprint on us at a young age, right? So
Hmm.
it's like with women when I train women here, women are taught from the get-go to be nice, right? The old line, sugar and
Right.
spice and everything nice, right? And now I'm telling them to do things that are directly counterintuitive to the way most of them have been raised. And I have to figure out a way to get through to them so that they're willing to do certain things to protect themselves in the event, hopefully never it happens, but you never know, that
Hmm.
someone tries to really harm them. And
Right.
I would say to police officers that would say to me, I could never do that. I could never put my fingers in somebody's eyes. And I'd say to them, I said, well, that's a problem. I said, you better hope you're never in it so bad. And the reason you don't come out of it or you get seriously hurt is you weren't willing to do that. And you have to try to think about it. So one of the things I do when I'm teaching is I tell people, that. I said, well, you have to be willing to stick your fingers in somebody's eyes. And of course, everybody in the room, if I'm doing a seminar, is like, oh yeah, yeah, like this. And I go,
Right.
no, 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 stop, stop. You're all shaking your head, yes, but I know most of you will not be able to put your fingers in somebody's eyeballs. You think
Right.
you are. I said, so you need to really think about what I'm telling you. You need to
Hmm.
go home and think about it, meditate on it. If I'm in this life and death situation, if I'm the mom and someone's trying to harm my child, if I'm the husband and someone's trying to harm my wife, vice versa, will I be willing to do something as nasty as that to save myself and someone else? And usually, once people start thinking about it and start examining it, they can kind of begin to believe that they're able to do it. But it's a process. It's not where I go, okay, you have to be willing to poke somebody in the eyes. And now everybody in the room is able to do that because they're
Okay.
not.
Now I'm going to share with you something that will probably change the way that you present that.
Okay.
Uh, I've got a question for you, and I ask a lot of people this question,
Sure.
even when I was an instructor. As an instructor, my role is what I'm doing is I'm teaching people to do unnatural things naturally.
Right.
Naturally, it becomes a part of you. Okay, so now when and this is what I do with my clients now. There's an exercise that they go through. So the question I have for them is, what keeps a person, a law-abiding person, law-abiding? What keeps them? What keeps them from becoming a criminal? And the answer to that is the fear of consequences. Okay, so that fear of consequence. Now that fear of consequences, is different for everyone.
Right.
Okay, so it's a moving thing depending on the individual. So one of the exercises that I have my clients go through is that we live by a set of rules, and we all have our own rules.
Right.
Most of us live by rules that we don't even realize that we have rules for things.
Right.
Okay, we don't understand them. And what I do with my clients is I say, look, we're going to establish some rules because you've got rules for your relationship, you've got rules for your friends, you've got all of these rules. But when as an instructor of the martial arts, there has to be a line in the sand that once you get to that line in the sand, is that it becomes something different.
Right.
And how now the question is how do you teach that? How do you train to that? Well, this is where the rules come in. And what I would do is I would have my students and even my clients now is I want you to give me 5 rules for that you're going to live by from this point. If you come up with 10, that's great. If you come up with 15 or 20, that's great. But right now I want 5. But with my students, I would say, I want 5 rules from you written on a piece of paper that if it came to the time to where you had to throw your fear of consequences out the window and that you had to destroy somebody, I want those rules, what it is that you're going to set for yourself. And they would come back and they would have a variety of rules. Well,
Right.
if my mom was attacked, if this and this
Right.
and this, and now because what you're doing is you're pre-programming the subconscious mind to accept and to understand that and say, this is my rule. Once that rule is internalized, it becomes a part of them.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And once that, and they can act on that rule because there is a definitive line in the sand.
So this is one of the things is you bring up a very interesting point, because this is one of my problem with most modern martial arts instructors.
Yeah, we won't even get into that.
Well, this is one of my problems. They teach people techniques that will harm another human being, but
Mhm.
they don't teach them the when, the how, the why, and the consequences that might happen if they do that. And they don't explain to them how the law works and how, like I'll teach a knife disarm technique, and I'll see a teenager disarm the knife, and the rule in the dojo is you never leave the knife in the attacker's hand, even
Right,
in the dojo. It has to be in your hand when you're done. And then I'll see them stab the guy, like they disarm him and stab him.
right,
And then I stop the class and I say, okay, well, you just stabbed the guy. I said, okay, so was that legal? And then, of course, everybody looks at each other, right? And I said, well, it was legal up until the time when he was on the floor. But if he's incapacitated and now you start stabbing him numerous times, now imagine there's a video of you doing that. So you were good up until the point where you took him out, you disarmed him, you got the knife. He's still laying on the floor. He's not attempting to get up or do anything to you. And now you start stabbing him multiple times. Now we've crossed a line, the rules you're talking about. My
right,
problem with a lot of modern martial arts schools is this line is not talked about enough, and what the repercussions can be, and
right,
what is the law, what am I allowed to do, how am I allowed to do it, and again, like I'm out in Arizona now. Obviously New York, I knew the rules hard and fast.
right.
Arizona, I'm still constantly looking up the laws here to
Hmm.
double check things, because again, the law out here is a little bit different. You're in
Right.
Texas, right?
I am.
Yeah, so same thing. I mean, every state's got their own little tweaks they do to the law that you want to
Right.
be aware of. So
Well,
I think that's
you
an
know what?
excellent exercise that you just mentioned, because I think a lot of martial arts schools could benefit from doing something like that with the students.
Well, one of the things that I used when I was teaching, and it's a progression because things are progressive.
Right.
Okay. Now, when a person who gets into a confrontation or a fight, all right, a lot of what they've learned because of the adrenaline drop and all of that stuff goes out the window.
Right. Right.
Okay. Because I've seen black belts, second,
Oh,
third
oh,
degree black, just get their ass
yeah,
handed to them
100%.
by a guy on the street that doesn't know a lick of karate. But however, this guy on the street, he's in a fight every other day. It's part of it's waking up and okay, yeah, I got to go out and find somebody to beat up.
It,
I mean,
it's it's normal to him.
it's normal to them. Okay. Now, teaching, there's a lot of different ways to go here, but in teaching students, I always taught a progression, and the progression is this: escape, control, destroy.
Right.
If you can't escape, you have to control. If you can't control, you have to move immediately to destroy, to
Right.
incapacitate, to
Right.
stop.
Right.
And if it means dropping that individual and crushing his head, then that's what you got to frickin' do.
Right.
And you gotta walk away and go, well, shit, what time is lunch?
Right.
And think about it. And
Right.
and that's a hard thing to do because you have to internalize that because of the way that you trained and just in speaking with you and watching some of your videos, you're already there. When you get into a confrontation, it doesn't elevate,
No.
it slows down for you.
Yes.
You slow things down because you become hypersensitive, you're hyper aware, and you're already seeing the telegraph movement from a person and already know what they're going to be doing
I
before they even
I
realize it.
often tell my students in the dojo that they appear to me to be moving in slow motion,
Right.
even though they're not. And they'll look at me and go, "How's that possible?" I say, "Well, I don't know. It's one, from what I understand, your visual acuity changes as you get older. You perceive the information differently. But for me, it's because I was in so much actual combat that you guys think you're moving fast, but it's so much faster when it's real on
Right.
both my end and the other guy's end. You know, that in the school, it seems to me you're moving slow, you know.
Right.
And that's why, so that's why it seems so easy for me to do it in the school, right? But yeah, you're 100% right. So how did hypnosis, did you use it on some of your students, on some of your fellow martial arts friends, and how did you help them in what areas?
Absolutely. And the way that I used it is was very simple and direct. I would have students sit down in the dojo, they'd be lining up and say, okay, everybody just have a seat. And here's what I want you to do. I want you just to relax, take a deep breath, relax, close your eyes. And I want you to picture or imagine or pretend what I'm going to tell you, because people visualize differently.
Right.
So when I tell them to picture, pretend, or visualize, usually this person is going to pick up on one of those ways. Okay. And I just say, I want you to imagine that you're in a fight, that you're in a situation, that you're walking this or this. And I paint a picture. And I want you to imagine that somebody is coming towards you. You know that you're going to get in a fight. And imagine them doing this and this. And what you were talking about, and how you sat in the chair and visualize, I just basically lead them into that.
You're leading them into that. Right.
Absolutely. And 10 minutes of that, of doing that, and it starts to ingrain in them of what their reactions are, or what their reactions should be, and looking at and teaching kids the micro movements, to notice micro movements from people, because people give they telegraph.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Right.
And you may be the best fighter in the world, but if you can't pick up on a telegraph, and I don't care who you are, that somebody comes across and strikes you against the jaw, they'll knock you out in a heartbeat.
Right.
Because you didn't see it. And somebody looking at a film going, well, he did this and did it. Man, I can't believe he didn't notice this and that and
Right.
that. And
Right.
there you go.
Right.
Okay. So the micro movements of being able to pick up on those things and seeing it before it does. And the person slowly, and as a police officer, my instructor growing up when I first started martial art, he was my next door neighbor, but he was also a police officer there in the little town I grew up in, or that. And he's 80 something years old today. And I saw him, my son was trained at his school.
Okay.
And that, so you have to teach these things, because people, they're not going to pick up things on the naturally.
No.
Okay. Many times you're not. You had that desire to say, okay, what do I need to do to get better, to improve this and this? You and I are cut from the same cloth
Right.
on that. There was stuff that I did as a kid that people look at me like, you're what are you doing? You're flipping nuts.
Right.
Okay. I mean, literally. I mean, it was kind of weird. But you have to teach that to kids and your students to pick up on, and especially women. And women have to be taught, look, there's the line in the sand that if you feel that you're in danger, or anyway, and you pick it up, learn to listen to that little voice in the back of your little pea brain there. If it's knocking on the door and say, hey, something's not right, pay attention to it.
Are you familiar with Gavin de Becker?
I am not.
So Gavin de Becker wrote a book called The Gift of Fear, and one excellent book. And he owns a company that they actually he owns a security company where they actually predict if someone's going to be the target of an assassin. So he works with the federal government, but he works with a lot of celebrities that receive these threats. But the Gift of Fear, I highly recommend people read it. And in it, one of the things he talks about is woman's intuition.
Mhm.
How a woman should never, ever doubt her intuition. It's one of the things I mention in class all the time. So it's interesting you're bringing that up, right? But the problem is a lot of women and not just women, but men do it too, where you get a vibe and you kind of shrug it off and go, ah, you know, you know, and this as a police officer, I could tell you, and I've discussed this with other police officers, there were nights when I was leaving roll call and I was getting ready to go out on patrol where you just didn't have a good feeling.
Mhm.
You couldn't explain it, what, who knows, right? But
Right.
you just had a feeling that, tonight maybe something's going to happen, you know? And on occasion, a guy at roll call would turn this to a couple of guys and go, yeah, I got a feeling tonight's going to be something's going to go on.
Mhm.
And there's always the few guys that go, come on, right? And but again, I learned to follow my instincts, my intuition, whatever that reptile brain is telling me as I'm walking out the door to go on patrol. Well, maybe something's going to happen tonight, so let me be a little bit more vigilant tonight. And that's one of the things I think modern people, to a large extent, have tried to flip the off switch on.
Mhm.
In other words, well, my gut tells me, oh, but come on, I got to give this guy a chance. He seems like he's okay. And then it's too late, right? Now,
Right.
now it's gone to shit. And now you say, boy, I should have trusted my gut. I should have listened
Well,
to my instinct. I'm a woman. I should have gone with my intuition, right? And
right.
even DeBecker in his book mentions, he actually says, if you're a woman and you bring a man home and the dog doesn't like him,
Yellow.
it's probably you probably ought to pay attention to your dog. And again, because the animals go purely on instinct, right?
Absolutely.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is because I do a lot of ancient arts too, that are, well, the one art I do is almost 600 years old. Another couple I do is 400 years old. And it's interesting, they all have their set of commandments.
Hmm.
And, like in the Katori Shinto Ryu, you are not allowed to engage in duels. So you are not allowed to challenge, like Miyamoto Musashi, he engaged in all these duels to perfect his swordsmanship. Students of Katori Shinto are not allowed to do that. They haven't been allowed to do that from the get-go. Now, if they are attached to a lord in ancient Japan, obviously they can fight for the lord, but you're not allowed to go out and just challenge people, right?
Right.
And then the art of jujitsu I study, which is Sosu Ishido, which is 400 years old, they have a set of moral rules or guidelines called the directions.
Right.
And when I was in Japan, my teacher's mother, who at the time was pushing 80, she wanted me to explain to her my understanding of those directions and what they meant. And her daughter was there. She spoke English, so she translated. And I went through all of them and she said, very good. And some of them she tweaked a little bit. She says, well, it also could mean this and that. But at the end, I said to her, well, I can't follow a couple of these. And she
Right.
was taken aback and says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm a police officer. One of them is if a person offends you by violent words or deeds, you must ignore it so you can have an eternal peace. Okay, well, my thing is if it's a violent deed, I have to stop it. And I'm a police officer, right?
Right.
And she literally said, "Oh, no, 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 no." She goes, "No, no. Police officers and military are exempt from those two because you're society's protectors."
Right.
So again, it's interesting because what people don't realize when you get into law enforcement or if you join the military and you're actually, going to engage in life and death combat and go out and try to subdue criminals or subdue the enemy, um, you're going to be doing things that are not normal for most people.
Right. Military is there to break things and kill people.
Right.
Period.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
and police officers sadly are sometimes called to do that, but at the minimum, we're taking your personal freedom away.
Absolutely.
And we may have to do that through the use of violence if you insist on fighting us or trying to prevent us from doing that.
Right.
So let
Well,
me go ahead.
the thing is my instructor growing up, he was a police officer, and one of the rules or a couple of the rules that we had when we started is that one, you do not tell anyone that you're training in the martial arts.
Right.
That's
Right.
the first rule.
Right.
The second one is that we had our t-shirts with the school name on it and all of
Right.
that. We were not allowed to wear that shirt to school.
Right.
You can't wear it to school.
Right.
Okay. These shirts are for when we go to testing and other dojos and that where they're
Right.
representing our school. That's
Right.
where the shirt is
Yeah.
going to be Warren, you're not to wear it to public. You're not to wear it to school. If I catch you wearing it because it was a small town,
Right.
if I catch you wearing it, you're not going to enjoy the
Right.
consequences of
Right.
this. Okay. So now, what was the purpose of that? Well, why would you advertise your skill set to someone that says, well, you know what? This guy I'm going to approach a little different. I'm going to hide behind this door. I'm not going to approach him directly, and I'm going to hit him in the head with a pipe as he walks by.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I first became a police officer, my first night there, a police officer came up to me. He'd been on about 5 years longer than me. My first night, so my first roll call, and he introduced himself, and it was very nice because some senior guys are not nice to rookie police officers. But he says to me, he says, "Hey, you were in a really tough area. It was a very high felony crime area, but I live not far from it, so I was kind of used to that." And he said to me, you should think about taking up and studying some type of martial art. He says to me.
Mhm.
I don't say anything. I go, okay, yeah, yeah, I'll think about it, right? I don't tell anybody that I know martial arts. I don't say anything, right? And then obviously, as months went on and stuff, and I was involved in stuff, and people saw me do
Right.
things, people would say, "Hey, do you train in martial arts?" And then I would be honest, I'd say, "Yeah," and then that particular guy that told me that, he's been training with me for 40 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
once
Okay.
he found out that I trained, he decided to
Right.
come and see what I was doing. He's been training with me. So let me ask you, so you're also now, I know you're into the whole carnivore diet thing.
Mhm.
Okay. So my wife's pretty much carnivore. My wife has autoimmune disease, right? I am not totally carnivore,
Mhm.
but I eat far more protein, than I do carbs. And I also, one of the things we've really started trying to limit is also processed foods,
Absolutely.
which is a massive problem. And one of my podcasts, more than one actually, I talk about health.
Mhm.
And one of the things I talk about is diet. And one of the things I see so many martial arts, like what the standard joke in my karate school was, Sensei, you'll never make eighth dan because you're not fat enough.
Right.
And like even me, when I moved out here to Arizona, um I put on weight. I wasn't training the way I was because I was living with my brother-in-law for 6 months, so I wasn't eating the normal food I eat. I wasn't training the way I normally do. So I was at a high of 188 pounds.
Mhm.
And then when I got down here, I really got more serious once I got the dojo put in place. My dojo now, I walk out my back porch and I walk 100 yards and I'm in my dojo, right?
Gotcha.
It's on my property, right? So, I started training. I started looking at, I decided I wanted to devote more effort to my own personal health, maybe take it out of the hands of doctors. And my wife's a doctor. Just want to mention that, right? Um, and so I decided to get more serious about my diet. And one of the things I started doing religiously was tracking my calories
Mhm.
every day with an app, tracking how much protein. And it's never going to be 100% accurate, but it's still going to help. And
Right.
I'm down to between 160 and 162 pounds now.
Gotcha.
And I'm having no trouble maintaining that. Now, don't get me wrong. If it's a bad Christmas weekend,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe I gain 3 pounds, but then when in 3 days I'm right back down. So I don't
Right.
get I don't get crazy about it.
Right.
Um, but I know you've been on a bunch of the carnivore. Some of those guys my wife follows. My
Mhm.
wife follows those guys. So, give me your experience with the carnivore diet and what do you think the benefits are?
Well, first off, the processed foods, when because I used to look at people that say were overweight and say, man, they need to exercise. And even as a hypnotist, when people would come to me to work with me, it was my recommendation. Look, we're going to do hypnosis, and hypnosis is going to help you stick to what you need to eat and get away from the addictions of carbohydrates and sugars and
Right,
stuff. That's what hypnosis is.
right,
Hypnosis in of itself will not cause you to lose weight. It reformats your
right,
subconscious mind
right.
to eat the way that you're supposed to. Now, the problem with that is
So,
that with
so,
most,
so
go
what
ahead.
you're basically saying is the hypnosis will help more with the cravings, the inclination to eat a certain way.
Right. just like stop.
It'll change your habits. It'll help
That's
change your habits. Okay.
right. It reformats because even you, I mean, you know, my clients that want to lose weight or get healthy, the question I ask them is, what is a food that you will absolutely not eat? That if you were stranded on an island somewhere, the thought of eating that food just doesn't cross your mind. What is it? We all have it.
Right.
So for you, what would it be?
If I'd had to say probably like liver.
Okay, so let's take liver.
Right.
All right. Now, if you can imagine eating liver, cooking it, smelling it, tasting it,
Right.
that that texture to it,
Right.
you know, it
Right.
just all of
Right.
that stuff. So you take that imagination, and now let's take a food that you absolutely that if it's in front of you, you're going to devour it, even though you know you shouldn't eat it. What is it?
Right. Let's say filet mignon.
No, a food that you know you shouldn't eat.
Oh, that I shouldn't eat.
Right.
Uh, Let me think. I'm trying to think because my diet's so simple now. I'm trying to think of something I wouldn't eat. Uh, Jesus.
Well, just pretend, throw something out at me.
All right, French fries.
French fries, perfect. Okay. So in hypno, let's say you eat French fries. Now, French fries nowadays are cooked in seed oils. They're bad for you. The way that they process it and potatoes, the GMO stuff, there's all sorts of
Right.
stuff wrong
Right.
with that. And if a person says, look, I'm addicted, I can't pass a McDonald's without stopping and getting the fries or whatever. So, okay. Well, we're going to deal with that in a couple of different ways. One is we're going to take the food that they're not going to eat, and we're going to take that liver, and I'm going to associate that liver to those fries as when they're in hypnosis,
Okay.
and there's going to be a connection.
Okay.
Okay. And then when they start thinking about fries, immediately what's going to happen is they're going to start thinking about liver.
Okay.
Smell liver. They're not going to smell the fries. They're going to smell liver because the subconscious mind is being reformatted to do that.
Right.
And then over a period of time, that will get stronger because the one thing that the subconscious mind needs with hypnosis is it needs time. It needs
Okay.
time to settle down and reformat and to understand what's going on. And then 3 or 4 or 5 days later, when that starts really implementing, people will call me and say, you know what, I've had no desire. Every time I think about this, it's like I can't do this.
So let me ask you. So you have a session with a person, you help them with this diet thing, smoking, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
So how many sessions does it normally take to get them on the path? And then once they're on the path, do you have to do a session every once in a while? Or if it's only if the person feels they're starting to waver, they reach out and say, hey, could we do another session? How does
Right.
it normally work?
Well, the way that works is that I have and I'll just take you through when I have a client.
Sure.
They contact me, and every client has to go through a consultation. It's a free consultation, and 100% of the time, it's just like what we're doing right here
Right.
online. They fill out an intake form. I get some background information on them. We meet. The meeting is for me to meet you, you to meet me. Do I like you? Are you somebody that I think I can work with? That type of thing. But the other thing is to find out whether they're going to be somebody that's going to follow my instructions. If I get a feeling that they're going to be a knothead, and I'm going to have to fight them on what
Everything.
they need to do and how that,
Right.
then I'm not going to take them as a client. They're
Right.
done. Okay. If somebody comes to me and say, hey, I need to quit smoking, and my wife said that I have to quit, and she told me to try this. Well, at that point there, we're done.
Right.
Because
Because
if they're
he's not
coming here to
interested.
try,
He's doing it
yeah,
because someone else is telling him to do it. Right.
right, if they're here to try it, because they're just going to try it and say it's not going to work for me, and say, well, see, I told you it doesn't work. And
Right.
and I have an ego. My ego is I like to work people where I have success with people. Okay,
Right.
so I'm not going to work with anybody that I
Right.
have an inkling I'm going to have a success with. So as a result, my success rates are quite high.
So it's the same with me. It's, like even in the New York school, which is a storefront, so high overhead, right? It's still there, the dojo in New York.
Right.
But if when you came in to join and I always do a free trial class. And, I tell people, well, do a free trial class. So if you see if you like me, if you like the school before you commit to joining.
Exactly.
But it's not only for them, it's also for me. So
Absolutely.
during that hour, I'm getting a feel for you, I'm getting the vibe. Okay, if I get the impression that you're someone that the only thing you're interested in is going to be in hurting people,
Right.
I'm going to tell you the school's not for you. Now, out here
Absolutely.
in Arizona, that's 100 times worse because out here I have no overhead. I had a
Hmm.
building built on my property. So now if someone comes in and says, I like to train, and like within a couple of weeks, they're acting in a way I really don't like, I'll give them an opportunity to correct themselves. But if they don't, they're out the door.
Right.
And again, because, I'm sure you feel the same way too. As I've gotten older, I just don't want to deal with this stuff anymore.
Absolutely.
Like,
Why create
again, I want to
problems?
deal with people that want to work with me, that have a certain set of, values or whatever way you want to look at it. And let's go forward together. And again, if you're going to be trying to work with someone through something like hypnosis, and they're just going to be totally against it before it even starts, well, then
Mhm.
again, what's the point? I don't
Absolutely.
get it. What's the point?
Exactly.
So,
So as they go through this, and I'll continue on as they go through the consultation, once we're done, I also have them take a personality test.
okay.
And that personality test will, and I already know when I meet them, I already know what kind of personality they are. But that personality test is more for them to something tangible that they can have that we'll discuss. And I'll explain to them that you need to learn about personalities because they will
Right.
change your relationships and your interactions with people once you understand personalities.
Right.
Okay. It will allow you to become, it will become, if you really study it, it'll give you a superpower. People will look at you like you're amazing. Okay. Because you can communicate with them on their level in their personality because you become a chameleon.
Right.
Okay. So once I have this information, I take this information and I tell them, look, I'm going to take this, I'm going to put together a program for you, and I'll send you in an email. That email is going to explain everything that we do, what it's going to go through, but it's also going to tell you how many sessions that I think that you're going to need to get through this whole thing. Okay. And I'm right about 95% of the time. So what I do is I take that, and the number of sessions is anywhere from about 4 to 10.
Okay.
Now, on I can count on one hand how many times I've done 10 sessions with the person.
Okay.
That's out of the norm. If I
Okay.
do 10 sessions with the person, it's usually on a different program. They're doing this, or it's something completely different.
Okay.
But typically, it's anywhere from the reality of it is from 5 to about 8 sessions, somewhere around in there. So I send that to them, and I say in the email, look at this, read it, discuss it with whoever that you think that you need to discuss it with. If you want to move forward, it gives you instructions on what to do. If you choose not to move forward with it, send me a text or an email and say, hey, Wayne, I've decided to go a different direction. And you will get a response from me saying, hey, good luck to you. If you need me, I'm here in the future. See you later.
Right.
Because I do not sell people on this process.
Right.
And about 90% of the time, people will come back to me and say, okay, I'm following the next step. I'm ready to go. Okay. And once they start, there's some things to do on the front end, which are, what are your rules? You got to list out your rules.
Right.
You got to figure out what are the things that you need to let go of that are a part of your life that you no longer need, that you want to let go of. It could be fear, it could be, the way that I talk to people, it could be, I really don't like being this way or this trauma that I experienced as a kid and this, and they have to list that out on a paper. Now that paper is a paper that no one else will ever see.
Right.
I don't see it. I don't need to see it. Okay. Because my role in this as a hypnotist is not to hear everything about what you've been through. I
Right.
don't need to hear that stuff. Traditional talk therapy, I mean, when you go in and you talk to a traditional therapist and you regurgitate all of this stuff, first off, you do that, you walk out of there, you usually feel worse walking out than you did going in. That's the first thing. The other thing, all you're doing is reinforcing all the crap that you wanted to let go anyway.
Right.
And it's perpetual. And people will come to me and say, look, I've been in therapy for the last 4 or 5 or 6 years or 10 years. I'm going, okay, well, This is not that.
Right.
Okay. We're talking 5 to 8 sessions here and we're done. Okay. Now, and that piece of paper, when we meet the first time, the first session that we have is a negative release session. It's to let go of all the crap, to give your subconscious mind permission to let that crap go, to no longer to consider it as information or this or how you're going to make decisions. That's done. That's over. And there's a process that I go through with them. Now, as a hypnotist, I don't need to hear that. I don't need to hear it. I don't need to hear any of that stuff, because once I get a person into hypnosis, it's almost what I explain to people is this, is you are an instrument and you know how to play your instrument. You play your instrument better than anybody else in the world. Okay. No, in my right, nobody else knows how to play your instrument. They may know how to push your buttons,
Right.
but they don't play your instrument. Now, what I am is I'm a conductor. I'm a conductor of your instrument. I don't know how to play your instrument. Don't need to know how to, but I understand tempo. I understand notes. I understand when to come in and when to go out and all that. So I'm going to lead you into hypnosis, which is a very pleasant experience. And once you're in that state of hypnosis, I'm going to conduct you on how to play your instrument better than you've ever played it in your life. So by the time our time is done together, not only are you going to be able to do that, but you're going to be able to utilize self-hypnosis for yourself going forward to make the changes or to increase this or to whatever it is you can go in,
whether it be losing weight, smoking, fears, whatever it is, sleep issues.
Right. Now, the benefit of that is because people will come to me and say, look, I got it on the internet and I listened to this video or listened to this and I'm just, well, there's a reason for that. And the reason is because you don't have a yardstick to measure it by. You don't know whether you've done it right, whether you entered the state, whether this, you got nothing.
Right.
Okay. I had years ago in the Army, as a matter of fact, when I first got to my duty station at Fort Benning, Georgia, I got in and I was in communications. I was attached to an infantry unit. And when I got there, nobody was in the communications department. Everybody had taken leave or whatever. They were gone for the next 3 weeks. So I kind of had to figure out what to do myself, which was a total experience. But once one of the guys in my DD-214 was my certificates and this and martial arts and awards and blah, all that stuff. Well, somebody had learned that I had trained in the martial arts and I was actively looking for someplace to train there on post. And a guy came to me, one of the soldiers, he says, you know what, you need to hook up with this guy. And I'm not going to use a name because I talked to him today. He knows who he is. So he's the karate guy of our company. I go, okay, cool. And I didn't pay any attention to it. I didn't care about it.
Right.
So about a week later, I heard this knock on the door. And I opened up the door and there's this little short guy there. And he goes, you Walker? I go, yeah. He goes, yeah, that's what it says, Walker, right here on my shirt. Okay. He goes, I heard you did karate. I said, well, I've trained in it and that and that. He goes, yeah. He said, I do karate. I said, cool. I said, who'd you train under? Where'd you train? He goes, well, I'm self-taught. I go, come again? Self-taught? What? Okay. How does that work? Explain to me self-taught. How does that work? Okay. So hypnosis is kind of the same way. You have to be taught. You have to be exposed to what it is, just like you have to be exposed to what pain is when somebody comes across and it strikes you.
Right.
And then you have to understand, it says, hey, if I'm going to get in a fight, chances are I'm going to get hit.
Right.
Chances are there's going to be a little bit of pain.
Right.
How do you recover from that pain? How do you absorb it? How do you internalize it? If you get hit, does everything go out the window and it goes, oh shit, mommy, where's mommy?
Right.
Okay. You have to train yourself to do hypnosis the same exact way. So once I lead them into that path, and once they start understanding what hypnosis is, and it's the same thing with meditation.
Right.
I've had people come to me meditate. I've tried for years and years to meditate in this. I say, okay, well, let me change your world. And I'll go through 2 or 3 sessions of hypnosis with them. And all of a sudden they make that connection, because hypnosis is meditation's little brother, is the way I look
Right.
at it.
Right.
Okay. It's with intent. It's like prayer. Are you a spiritual person?
Yeah.
Are you a spiritual person?
Yes. Yes.
You believe in God or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you're a spiritual person and you pray, well, there's different types of prayer.
Right.
There's a prayer you sit down, you pray over your meal, or you pray for Bob who lost his job, or that and that.
Right.
But then there's the prayer that's a little bit deeper than that. And it's a prayer that you go into.
Right.
You go into prayer. Well, if you go into somewhere, it's a destination.
Right.
Well, you go into hypnosis, it's a destination. When you go into hypnosis and when you go into prayer, you're going to the same place.
Right.
The difference is the intent.
Right.
When you go into prayer, it's to connect with the creator, to God,
Supreme
to
being.
talk to,
Right.
to listen,
Right.
to ask.
Right.
Okay. When you go into hypnosis, you're there to make changes to the subconscious mind, to improve the this, to get stronger, da, da, da. So it's the intent. It's like when you sit down and you go to bed, you're going to go to sleep. It's a destination.
Right. So let me ask, so how long are you doing this for these reasons? Non-entertainment, helping people. How many years are you doing it
Oh,
now?
since 2006.
Okay. So how many clients would you have, say you've had throughout all those years?
Oh
Like
my
how,
gosh. On average, one-on-one clients, I probably have on a yearly basis anywhere from 150 to 250 clients,
okay.
depending, during the COVID thing
Okay.
was through that. But what COVID did is it really opened up to where most
Right.
of my
Zoom.
clients
Zoom.
are across the country in
Yeah. It's
different countries.
even me. I'm teaching anywhere from 10 to 12 Zoom classes a week.
There you go.
I've got
Yeah,
students in other countries and all over the country
right,
and stuff.
right.
So the other thing I was going to ask was, and I'm assuming that probably a lot of your clientele comes from word of mouth.
It does come from word of mouth, but surprisingly, people come to the conclusion of, and it's kind of weird, of hypnosis, and they'll do an internet search, my local clients, and because I have such a strong presence on there, they come up with me on my Google listing. The other is that if clients from around the country, they expose people like this through podcasts that I
Right.
guest stars
Right. Well,
off
look, I mean,
on.
this podcast is a prime example. I mean, right? It's going to be mostly martial arts guys.
Right.
And maybe, maybe a martial arts guy watches this who's having a weight issue, or maybe wants to stop smoking, or, whatever. Again, maybe he decides, you know what, I've tried everything else. I'm going to give this a shot. And, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I
Right.
mean,
Well,
you know,
the other thing with athletes, I mean, I've worked with professional athletes, uh, MMA guys, you name it, I've worked with them. And within that arena, it's not really I'm the hypnosis guy, but it's
right,
more of a mind coach.
right, right.
Okay, your
Well,
mind coach.
my younger son was a professional baseball player. So he played in the Atlanta Braves organization up in Double A, and he was a catcher.
Hmm.
And, so again, he'd say through high school and college, and, he'd say things like, jokingly say, pitchers are out of their minds.
Hmm.
Like he'd say that to me all the time. He says, Dad, you have no idea. He says, every single guy that's on the mound, I have to treat differently. Like I
Hmm.
have to go out there. It's like I'm a psychiatrist, a hypnotist, an analyst. He says, so some guys I got to go out and basically like almost slap them across the face to get them to focus. Other guys I got to go out and make them laugh so they relax because they're soup like this, right?
Right.
So it's, so I definitely understand what you're saying as far as guiding the mind. And that's going to lead me into an area I wanted to touch on with you, where it brings it back to martial arts. So I see all these so-called martial arts people that follow these people that can supposedly just touch them and they pass out, or they wave their hand in the air and they go flying. And here's what I'll say. It's not just in the West, because there's a bunch of these guys in Japan that I know of. Okay. There's a bunch of these guys in China that I know of. They're all over the place. So one of my early teachers in Japan, Hoshino Sensei, he studied Chinese martial arts. And he always warned me that be careful of certain people that do Qigong, that he literally used the term hypnosis. He says, Mike, it's like they try to hypnotize you to believe certain things. So my question to you is, do you feel when we see these big, strong, hulking guys that a guy, just touches his shoulder or waves his hand in the air and the guy collapses unconscious or starts shaking uncontrollably or whatever? Do you believe this is a type of hypnosis, that these people are putting these suggestions in their minds so much, and that these people are so open to this that they buy into it, even though the rest of us know this is complete nonsense?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Now,
so the war,
let
good.
me give you an example.
Sure.
Okay. Uh, I know of several, one of these guys back in the 70s and 80s. He was real prominent. Uh, his name starts with a D.
Yeah, I know him
Okay.
too.
Yeah. You know, okay.
Yeah.
So when in a comedy hypnosis show, that is still hypnosis.
Right.
Okay. And what you're doing is you've got 100 people in the audience and you're doing what is called a pre-talk. And a pre-talk is conditioning the people in the audience to want to come forward and be part of the show because they're the stars of the show.
Right. Because if you don't get anybody to come up, what are you going to hypnotize yourself? I mean, yeah,
Exactly,
right.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So, and now out of 100 people, about 25% of them are going to be susceptible to hypnosis in that environment at
Okay.
that time.
Okay.
So when you open it up and they come on the stage, and as a hypnotist, we're picking and choosing who we want on the stage from that point. Okay, you can go sit down and do this, and we may take them through an induction and this, and they may pop out of it, and then okay, you can go sit down.
Right.
But we'll out of 15 or 20 people that come there, we may end up with 5 or 6 or 7 people, and out of the 5 or 6 or 7 people, 3 or 4 of them are going to be what we call superstars. They're
Right.
going to be the centerpiece of because they're going to identify themselves.
Right.
And when you take this what you're talking about with other martial artists, there's not a nickel's worth of difference in hypnotic language because that's what it is. There's not a nickel's
Okay.
worth of difference in politicians,
Okay.
in these preachers of these massive churches,
Okay.
okay, of Jim Jones,
Right. Cult leaders.
cult leaders. There's not
Right.
a nickel's worth of difference. They're all using hypnotic language to where they get everybody, the masses, and they change their perspective because perspective is reality. Your perspective is your reality. My perspective is my reality. Now, you may walk outside and you go look up in the sky and go, oh my gosh, look at that wonderful green sky. And if that's your perception, then that's your reality.
Right.
Who am I to argue with that? Now, you're wrong.
Right.
But for me to tell you you're wrong, and it's like anything else, if you tell somebody they're wrong in this, they hold on to things tighter.
So I was doing a Tai Chi demonstration in St. Louis, and I did a particular move, and I was just doing a form. So I wasn't demonstrating on somebody. I
Right.
was just demonstrating a form. And afterwards, this guy came over to me, very rock solid guy, family guy, uh, big businessman. And he said to me, when you did this move, I felt something go through me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I looked at him and I said, no, you imagined something went through you.
Okay,
So,
now here's where we're going to depart.
okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Well,
Uh,
so wait, I'm not saying he didn't.
No, no, no.
But the reason I can't say he did,
Right.
because if I start saying that, I'm planting a seed in his head where he's now going to look for that feeling all the time, or that kind of rare occurrence that
Right.
happens sometimes, some weird occurrence that happens in martial arts. But,
Hmm.
but I don't want to be someone that, because I know someone else that went to Japan to train with one of these so-called charlatans.
Hmm.
And when the guy tried to do the thing on the guy I know, it didn't work.
Right.
And the charlatan said to him, "Well, the problem is your chi is dirty, but as you stay here and we go through this more and more and we cleanse your chi." So my thing is, as an instructor, if someone tells me they experience some type of weirdness in my dojo, I don't ever like to play into that or play that up that I possess some type of magic ability,
Right.
because I just think that then it starts going down a kind of dark path that I don't want to go down myself, and I don't
Mhm.
want to bring anybody along with me. So
Right.
that's what I mean by that. So
I'm gonna present something to you, and when I do, you're probably gonna go, "Oh shit, yeah, I understand." Uh, if you go if you go anywhere and you're sitting in a restaurant, for example, and I've done this many times, and you pick out a person and you focus on that person and you look at that person, and I may say, you know what, I want them. I'm going to look at this person. I'm going to get their attention, and I'm not going to say a word to them.
right,
And I'm focusing, and they could be reading a book, they could be on
right,
the computer or whatever. And you focus on that individual, and after a few seconds, that person is
right, right,
okay. The feeling of it's like, okay, something is off. Okay. Now, what is that? It could be energy, it could be this, but I know for a fact, I just deal with facts, okay, that I can look at a person and I can affect them by that look. Now, let's take it back to martial arts. My thing is, and belief system perspective is this. If I get close enough to you and I can touch you, you're going to get hurt.
right,
You're going to hurt. You're not going to enjoy the experience.
right.
Okay. Now, does that mean that I'm a bad da 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 da? No, 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 no. What it
Right.
means is that I understand what I can do. I understand the body's reaction because a body is a body.
Right.
Okay. It's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. You hit soft targets, the body will react. Okay. Now, granted, when a person gets into what you call the reptilian mind or the primitive mind,
Right.
okay, and there may be some things that you can come across and hit them and they won't even react to it because they're adrenaline and this and this. Now,
Right.
is there a way to
Right.
control them? Yeah, there's a way to control them.
Right.
Okay. But you're going to have to go overboard in order to get their
You're gonna
attention.
have to escalate.
You're going to have to escalate it
Yeah.
because you have to put enough pain on them in order to override that adrenaline rush. Okay. That's just the reality of it.
You know who Pat McCarthy is?
Who?
Pat McCarthy. He
Pat
wrote.
McCarthy.
He translated the Bubishi, and he's written a lot of books. He's very famous in martial arts. He lives on Okinawa now, and he was in my dojo. And we were sitting in my office, and the whole pressure point thing was very popular at the time.
Right.
And he looked at me and he says, "Mike, I don't know how you feel, but all I know is anytime I've had to subdue somebody or defend myself, my violence had to be superior to their violence.
Hmm.
There was no magic that stopped it." And I said, I
Right.
agree 100%. And again, going back to this idea of a magic solution, right, to something, or, them putting these thoughts in people's minds that they start believing things. Um, and I like the one guy you mentioned. I mean, what a lot of people don't know about is like a lot of the people that he was using to demonstrate all the time. And when he would hit them in the neck,
Right.
a lot of those people wound up getting lumps. They got lumps growing in their neck from being hit there so often.
Right.
And again, like a person like that to me is, again, they've lost their moral compass, right? So obviously, you could possibly get a bad hypnotist, right?
Oh,
Who
without a doubt.
who
Yeah,
loses his
absolutely.
moral
Yeah.
compass. The same way you can get a bad police officer, you can
There's
get
a
a bad
very
doctor.
fine
You know?
line. There's a very fine line between what is right and manipulation.
Right.
Okay. I mean, the reality of it, here's the thing. I could have 10 clients come into my office, and out of the 10 clients, I could probably have 6 of them that if I once I put them into hypnosis and led them down there, that I could plant suggestions that they would give me their ATM card and their PIN code
Right.
once they come out, that you'll give me that information and you'll hand that over to me, and you'll
Right.
smile and walk out the door
Right.
happy that you did it, not
Right.
realizing. Okay, I could do now. There's 4 or 5 of them that are going to say that because it's not their natural propensity. Okay, I'll give you an
Right.
example. When I started doing the comedy hypnosis shows, one of the skits that I did was to take a woman and to have convince her that she was the most amazing stripper in the world, that people would come from around the country to come and watch her do her striptease act. Okay. And I brought her up and she this. Now, one of the things is that you normally, as a hypnotist, would tell them at no time will you take any of your clothes off.
Close off. Right. Right.
Okay. Well, I didn't give that suggestion to her at that time. And once I let her loose, she started undressing. And I had to, I mean, she got to the point where she opened her shirt and there was bra. And I said,
Right.
whoa, 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 deep sleep, relax. And I put her back into hypnosis.
Right.
Now, when we were done, everybody laughed because it was all adults. It was,
Right.
you
Right.
know, when we were done, the husband came up to me. He goes, you know what? That's the funniest shit. But you know what? You don't have to put her into hypnosis to do that, because that was her natural propensity
Right.
to do that.
Right.
Okay. If you have a natural, it's like people would say to me, says, can you hypnotize somebody to kill someone?
Right.
Well, if they have a natural propensity to want to do that, then absolutely.
Well, you look at some of the programs our government ran.
Don't even get me involved with that. I mean,
Okay, but you understand what I'm talking
I
about. I
understand
mean, and not
exactly.
just our government, I'm sure other governments,
Absolutely.
where they're looking to learn how to control the mind. And both
Absolutely.
probably for both good and bad, maybe to get more a higher level soldier or a lone assassin that is willing to do something. And again, if he's willing to kill originally, if he's already experienced the thing
Call
of
of Duty.
taking a life, then it's easier, like you're saying,
Right.
to implant the suggestion and get him to do it. So
Right.
it's like so Wayne, it's no different than I say with martial arts. Um, I meet a lot of bad people doing martial arts,
Mhm.
and their morals are very questionable, and they're normally I don't have no interest in being around them. I meet them once, and again, it doesn't matter. I've met them in China, I've met them in Japan, I've met them all over the world. You've got good and bad everywhere.
Right.
So I just think again, if it's your nature is your nature.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now can a person, and this is the thing. Look, if a person, because I've worked with people who are alcoholics, I've worked with people who are addicted to drugs. They've been through 14 different aversion things and all of
Right.
that. And they come in and they see me, and I've got a high success rate with these people. Okay.
Okay.
Some of them, 10% of them, 15% of them, it's not going to work.
Right.
Okay. Because there has to be the want to,
Right.
that they have to want to, that little thing. It's like kids in school. We have, we have all of the United States spends more money per student on students in school than any other place in the world.
Right.
You would think we have the most educated. The problem is the kids, it's not the teachers. Sometimes
Right.
it's the teachers. I mean, I'm
Right.
not saying it's
Right.
not all, but the kids have to come with the part of the want to. And there are kids in there that want to, and those are the kids that go into the advanced set because they want to.
So
There are other kids that what they want to do is they want to mess around on their phone. They want to mess around with video games.
Right.
Because when a kid plays video games, they're going into hypnosis.
Right. Right.
Period.
It's doing a
They
lot.
drop
It's
in.
doing a lot of stuff to their brain. No
They're
question
dropping
about it.
into hypnosis.
Right.
Okay. So they already know what it feels like, and they
Right.
boom. Okay. So the want to is what it has to be. And that is the want to is taught at home. The parents instill the want to, because if you don't, I'm going to tan your ass.
Right. Right.
There's a pain and pleasure.
Right.
Life is
Right.
full of pain and pleasure.
Right.
Whichever is bigger wins.
Well, you know, it's
Okay.
interesting. I used to tell my children, like they'd say to me, well, so-and-so's parents are letting them do this. And my
Yeah.
response was always, well, you don't have so-and-so parents. You have real parents. And as I've told you once before, I'm not your friend. I'm your
Right.
father. And until you're out of this house, this is the way it is. And you talk about the desire to do something. My son, that became the professional baseball player. Obviously, he had an older brother, 4 years older. He's always playing with his older brother and his older brother's friends. So obviously, when he was younger, he's not as good as they are, right? But he used that as rocket fuel. And by the time my oldest son was in college, he was telling my oldest son was the captain of his college baseball team. And my oldest son was telling the players on his team, he says, well, you think I'm good? You got to see my kid brother.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason my son got drafted was the Brave scout showed up at the college complex and parked his car, but he got there 2 hours early. And he said, I'm not going to drive back because then I can come back. I want to watch practice today. He had a few kids, including my own, he was thinking about. So he got himself a sandwich and he sat there and was waiting. He says, oh, I'll just sit and relax and wait the 2 hours. I got some paperwork I'll do in the car. So he tells the story, the scout. I sit there and I start to eat my sandwich and I look up and here comes Mitch, my son. He's walking into the field with his girlfriend, who's the top softball player at the college. 2 hours before practice is going to start. And now she goes down to second base. My son's a catcher, so he's working on his throws down to second. Then she's throwing him soft toss, he's hitting. Then he's helping her with stuff. And then they're doing other things. And the guy was like, Mitch was there 2 hours before the regular practice started. And people would ask me and they'd say to me, boy, how'd your son get so good? Right. And I'd say, because he really, really worked at it. You know, he worked at it. Right. He had the want, right? And every year, me and my wife, as they were growing up, we'd say to him, you know, okay, you still want to play baseball? You really still want to do this? Yeah. And we started then investing in high level baseball instruction. Not me, right? Real, like guys that were professional baseball players.
Right.
And again, that obviously benefited them both, right? But again, that desire to do something, you know, so and again, to instill that in people is important. And I just I'll just mention this to you. I told you earlier that one of my students was hypnotized because he wanted to quit smoking, and it worked for him for a year and a half. And he quit for a year and a half, and then he had something happen in his life, and he started smoking again. But, you know, over a year and a half ago, I started working with him and helping him to lose weight and doing things. And he can't believe the difference in a little over a year. I mean, he's lost a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
I've got him refocused on things, you know, where he's trying to accomplish, we've set goals. He's trying to accomplish those goals. And both his head and his health are in a much, much better place. And, you know, sometimes I just think people might need a jump start. And
Absolutely.
maybe some certain things don't work for some, like me, like people say to me, like my wife says to me all the time, there can be a bowl of candy there. I won't eat it. But my wife's got to throw it out. Like she knows that's a problem. Like she'll want that sugar. So she throws it out. No problem,
Right.
right? Now, do I cheat every once in a while? Okay. I'm not a monk. Of course, everybody cheats and is going to have a piece of cake or
Right.
whatever. That's just normal, right? I think if you're crazy in one direction, again, I think that's probably too much too. But you know, if the hypnosis, if someone's watching this and they think maybe, you know, well, I tried this and it didn't work, you know, well, maybe give the hypnosis a try. See what
Well,
happens. You might be pleasantly surprised and it might
right.
help you, you know.
It would. Now here's the thing. I want to tell you two things. My introduction to the carnivore diet.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, over the years, I mean, I ended up got in work got in the way. I was traveling. I wasn't training or that, and so I put on weight.
Right.
And I'm part of the VA system. And I had my blood pressure started going up, and I got up. I'm 6 foot, and I got up to 335 pounds.
Okay.
Okay, and I had tried. I'd tried every. I know how to train. I would go into the
Right.
gym.
Right. Of course
I've
you
got
do.
a
Right.
bag in the. I've got a
Right.
bag in my garage. I used to box. I know how to train, and nothing was working. I modified my what I thought was my diet. I cut out all of the which I never was really a big soda drinker, but
Right.
every once in a while. But
Right.
the sweets and this and the
Right.
bread and the carbohydrates, we cut back on them, and I would spend because I would be the cook in the house, and I would spend 2.5 hours cooking dinner and making
Right.
this and all of the vegetables and this,
Right.
and it wasn't having an impact. And I had gone to the VA and they had tried everything. I said, what about this gastric bypass stuff, man? So they started looking at that, and you have to jump through certain hoops. And I started looking at the research, and about half of the people that go through that, it doesn't work for them or that. And I'm going, gosh, dang, man. And my wife had mentioned the carnivore diet a couple of different times, and it just went in one ear and out one ear, out the other. Okay. Because when she says diet, it's like, okay, any diet will work if you stick to it, but they're not sustainable.
That's the
Okay.
issue. That's
So,
100% the
and
issue.
that's the issue. So my wife, now we live, I have a small ranch. I've got cows, I've got chickens, I've got pigs, I've got horses, I've got dogs, I've got animals that I feed I don't even know about. Okay. So every year we put a cow in the freezer. We put a pig in the freezer. We have it
Right.
processed. So there. So my wife came to me, and this was the second week in September last year.
Okay.
Okay. So my wife said, "You're done. We're doing carnivore. I don't want to hear anything else out of it. We're doing
Right.
carnivore." And I said, "All right, whatever. I got nothing to lose."
Right.
So we started. I mean, it was like, yes, today we eat this way, tomorrow this is the way we're eating.
Right.
There was no gradual thing. It was
Right.
like a light switch. You
Right.
switch. The first 2 weeks that I ate that way, I lost 15 pounds. Okay. Now, granted, a lot of it was water
Yeah,
weight
of
because I was
course.
out of
Right.
work.
Right.
So from the second week in September to March, the beginning of March, I lost 85 pounds.
Right.
Okay. I lost 85 pounds. Now,
Right.
about 3 weeks into it, I started looking at things, and I went down that rabbit hole. And when I go down a rabbit hole, I want to know everything about everything and the why and the this and this.
Right.
And I will spend hours watching videos and reading and this and that. And I started understanding what was going on with our food supply.
Oh
And
yeah.
if you listen to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.,
Oh yeah. Listen.
okay, and he's talking about the food industry, it is not your friend.
No.
They're
So
producing chemical laden stuff that causes you to gain weight and to get fat and to create these cravings.
so my wife's a doctor. She's a podiatrist, but she was a surgeon, right?
Hmm.
And she's retired now. Since we moved out here, she retired. But she has said like they barely touch on nutrition
Right.
in med school. And this is going way back now, right? But again, she's a doctor and she's looked into all this stuff. And again, she's looking at it a little bit differently from guys like me and you are looking at it because
Hmm.
she's understanding certain things about the body at a little bit different level than guys like we are, right? And yeah, I mean, look, you know, the food
But
company food
the
companies are not our friends.
no, they're
They
not.
they
No,
put things in there. They
they're
want
not.
us addicted. They want us stupid. Here's one of the things I'll say. And this irked me to hell during COVID. Um, okay, get the shot, get the shot. Okay,
Right.
but you're morbidly obese, but you can stay obese, just get the shot. No,
Right.
that was the time for our government to say, okay, folks, it's time to get up off the couch, put the fork down, exercise, lose weight, get yourself healthy, no matter what you got to do. But that was never said.
Right.
And my wife says it all the time too. Like you go to the doctor and the doctor wants to give you a pill.
Hmm.
That's the answer to everything.
Right.
And again, like I've said to some of my friends, it's not like I have a doctor that trains here, and I asked him, I'd been on Lipitor for a long time, and you know, I went to my cardiologist and I maxed out on the treadmill, and the cardiologist said to me, she goes, I won't get another guy in here for 2 or 3 months that can do what you just did. And
Right.
I'm 61 now, but I was 60 when I did that. And then, I mentioned to the cardiologist and he says, yeah, give it a shot. So I did. And my cholesterol went up a little bit again. And the guy said to me, well, listen, you're going to have to go back on it. I said, oh,
No, no, no.
no, no.
But
So wait. So I go, all right. And then I went back on it and then I felt like garbage. So it was good that it happened because when I went off it, I didn't realize how much better I was feeling.
right.
You understand what I'm saying? But when
Yeah.
he told me to go back on it and I started taking it again, within 2 or 3 weeks, I was like, "Oh my God, I feel like garbage.
Right.
Like my
But
joints
see,
hurt." So I went off it again, and I'm like again, like I just watch my diet. I eat mostly a lot of protein, but I also exercise a lot,
mhm,
a lot.
right.
So so again, which separates me from a lot of people. I mean, I'm a full-time professional martial arts guy. So
Mhm.
I'm training all the time. And especially as I get older to maintain my skill set, yeah, I sit in this chair to interview you, but this morning I was teaching, this afternoon I'll be training, so
Right.
because I have to do those things. So yeah, I just think I
But
think
see,
there I think there's a reckoning coming in this.
there is, and there are doctors, medical doctors that I follow concerning the carnivore diet,
Oh,
and
100%.
the whole thing with cholesterol. I've read the studies. The doctors present the studies. Cholesterol is not a precursor to heart disease. As a matter of fact, studies show that the higher your cholesterol is, the less dementia, the less mental issues, acuity,
Right.
or that. And if you have dementia and you go on the carnivore diet, it will either abate it or it'll reverse it.
So
All of
like
those things.
so I'm going to my doctor in a couple of weeks. Going to do blood work. The next week we're going back. Now I'm not saying nothing. And he's going to look at my numbers and if he says, "Oh, Mike, your cholesterol's up."
Yeah,
He's going to say, "Well, we're going to have to raise Lipitor." I said, "Well, no, I haven't taken Lipitor in 8 months.
exactly.
I haven't taken Lipitor since 3 weeks after I was here last." And I'm going to say, "Doc, with all due respect, I'm not going on it. I realized how much it hurt my
Good
body."
for you.
And then the
Good.
one doctor that trains here, I asked him about it. I says, "Hey, what's your feelings on the statins?" He said, I wouldn't take a statin if you put a gun to my head." Right.
Right.
And again, like I get checked. I go to a cardiologist every year. Um, I get checked. I'm in really, really good health. So I'm like, okay, like, I mean, of course, could I have a heart attack? Yeah, I guess any one of us could have a heart attack at any time, right?
Right.
But again, I think the answer, all these drugs, I don't think are the answer. I mean, I'm trying to get off as much drugs as possible. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I take an over-the-counter allergy medicine because I do have allergies, right?
Right.
So, and then when I came out here, they changed it a little bit because your Arizona is different from New York, right?
Well,
But
if you go strict carnivore for 30 days, you'll see dramatic differences in a lot of things. And
right,
my wife and I, we do the intermittent fasting. So our first meal is at noontime,
right,
and our last meal, which we eat 2 meals a day,
right,
is at around 4:30, 5 o'clock. If we don't
right.
eat by that time, we just don't eat.
And
And then
how much weight have you lost?
85 pounds. I'm down
So
about 90 pounds. I got about 20 pounds to go to get to my fighting weight.
yeah, I got my student was up to 288. He's
Hmm.
down to about 240,
Hmm.
about a year. Um, Stopped drinking alcohol, doesn't touch alcohol. I don't drink alcohol. I never have, so that's an easy for me. I never smoked, so that's another easy one for me. But yeah, I mean, and I just kind of guided him along, in changing how he ate, what he ate, getting off the couch, exercising more, setting a goal, trying to achieve that first goal. Okay, now let's set a new goal.
Right.
And but I could see where, some people aren't disciplined enough. They need that initial maybe
Well,
kick
let's
start, that
let me
thing
throw
to help them. And,
right. Let me throw
maybe
this at
hypnotism, maybe should be something that people consider. If if it can help them, they should give it a shot, you know?
right. So let me throw this at you. If you have let's say you have your dining room table sitting in front of you and it's completely empty, and we put on that dining room table all the foods, the good foods, the bad foods, you shouldn't eat this, you put them
Right.
all in there. And I ask you to separate the good foods from the bad foods on one side of the table, put the good foods on the one side, the bad foods on, and you're going to probably do that with almost, if not 100% accuracy.
Right.
So you already know what you
Right.
don't need to eat.
Right.
Okay. But when a person comes in and they already know what they shouldn't eat, but they eat it anyway. Why is that? Well, it's because this hasn't been retrained.
Right.
So if you retrain this to where you look at that and you go, oh yeah, I don't eat that. Oh, I don't eat that. I don't eat that. Okay, because there are some people that they have the best intentions. They say, okay, I'm going to eat good. I'm going to
Right.
make my meal and take it to work. But and then they come on the way home. They say, oh my gosh, it's too late. I had this. I got to go to the gym. I'm not going to have time to cook.
Right.
And next, thing you know, they're in line to McDonald's or that, picking up McDonald's and that because that's where because of this.
Right.
But with the carnivore diet, it look. It takes me 10 minutes to cook it.
Right.
It takes me about 10 minutes to eat it, and I'm done. Because all I eat is meat, eggs, maybe a hard cheese, avocado. But as far as vegetables and fruits and all that stuff, don't eat any of it.
So one of my the things I mention to people is if we still had to hunt for our food, we'd all be a lot thinner,
Yep.
right? Because you had to go out there, you had to hunt it, and then you had to dress it, and you had to prepare it and everything, right? And now it's simple. You get in a car, you drive to the pizzeria in New York, you go to the fast food place, right? You go in a supermarket, you walk down the aisles. I mean, my God, the snack aisle, it's frightening. And look, I'm not saying I never have a snack, but again, I discipline myself. I'm not going to sit there and I may have a handful of tortilla chips, okay?
Right.
But I'm
But
not.
you know what? The interesting thing about that is that once you go down the rabbit hole and you start looking at how that food is made and what
Oh
it
yeah.
does
Oh
and
yeah.
all of that, it once you learn that and you look
Right.
at it and you're putting that in your, I mean, that has a change of paradigm
Oh yeah.
there for you.
100%.
Okay, absolutely has a
Yeah.
change. Look, when I was growing up here in the great state of Texas, we had the Southern diet. We had
Oh,
fried, we had
right.
this,
Right.
this, but what we fried in was lard.
Right.
Now,
Right.
now I do when we do a pig, I take all the fat and I render it down to lard. I've got cans and cans and
Right.
cans or jars and jar of
Right.
lard in the freezer.
Right.
Now, lard is a good fat.
Right.
It has more aminos than cold water fish.
Right.
Okay. It will not it doesn't absorb into the food when you fry it,
Right.
like processed foods
Right.
do,
Right.
like processed seed
Right.
oils
Right.
do. So we fry our eggs in it, bacon grit. We eat the bacon grit. I mean, look, and that's what we eat.
Right.
Nothing else. And if we
Right.
have, my wife today is making ceviche.
Okay.
Okay, we'll have some fish, she'll have some tomatoes, some onions, and this, and that's about, and then we use pork rinds as our chip. That's what we eat is pork rinds if we have that.
If I bread chicken cutlets, we use pork rinds.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
it. That's it. Because it's a neutral,
Yeah.
it's a neutral, it takes on the flavor of whatever you're
Yeah.
cooking, and
Yeah.
that's absolutely
Yeah.
okay. So it just becomes, and it's very sustainable. It's very that you can stick to it. It's just the way that you eat.
Right. Right.
Okay. And
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
eat fast food. It's just like we
Yeah.
don't eat it. We don't
Yeah.
go to
Well,
restaurants.
living where I live, in order to go eat fast food, we've got to drive 20 minutes.
Right.
So we just not interested. And don't get me wrong, we'll go out to a restaurant every once in a while. I mean,
Right.
of course we will, right? Someone's birthday, whatever. Okay, right. But like my wife's very particular in what she'll order in a restaurant. You know, um, And yeah, I mean, I think it has to become a habit.
It
It,
has to
do-
be a
it,
part of you.
it has to become
Who you
normalized.
are.
Like this is
I
this is
just don't.
normal for me now. Right.
Absolutely.
You know?
I just don't eat that other stuff. I
Yeah.
just don't eat it. And that's where, like I say, I go back to that's where the hypnosis comes in to retrain the subconscious
Right.
mind that this is the way that you are. Your rules,
Right.
okay, the rules are the rules. The
Right.
rules are I don't eat fast food. I just don't
Right.
do it.
Right. Right.
Okay. Don't do it. I
Right.
just don't do it.
Yeah.
And that becomes a part of who you are. Now,
Yeah.
when I work with people who want to lose weight now, when I interview them, they'll come to me and say, "Hey, well, I'm doing this Mediterranean diet, or I'm doing this kind of diet," and I say, "Look, you have to adopt the carnivore diet. If you don't adopt the carnivore diet, then we're not going to work with you. I'm
Right.
not going to work with you." Now,
Right.
what I do is I send them information on the carnivore
Right.
diet. I send them videos to watch. You watch this, and then after that, we'll talk. If this is something that you feel that you can do,
Right.
we're golden. You're gonna
Right.
you're gonna be
Right.
amazed. But some people will contact me and say, "There's no way I can do this." I say, "Well, okay, well, I'm
Yeah,
sorry to hear that."
and I get it. I mean, again, am I 100% carnivore? No. But I'm eating 100 times more protein than I used to eat. And
Right.
again, I feel fantastic. I'm constantly, people are constantly like, having this YouTube channel, right? Whenever I mention my age, there's always a comment, boy, whatever you're doing, let me know.
Absolutely.
And and I say, well, so listen, I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, I had a blast talking to you. And
Yeah, I could go on for longer
when
than
I
this.
started this podcast, I had no idea where it was going to go. Um,
Hmm.
and I think people like this one. We talked about a lot of different interesting subjects, so I really appreciate you coming on.
I
And
appreciate it.
maybe we'll do it again in the future.
Absolutely. You know what? But I want to leave you with this: is
Sure.
that what you do in your podcast and what a lot of people do in their podcast, they 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 communicate things to people that they're not going to hear anywhere else.
Right.
And there's such a value in that to be exposed, to learn and grow.
So I'll just say this, right? So I started this podcast at the suggestion of one of my former police partners who also trained with me in martial arts. I had never had the idea in my head, ever. And then I had to kind of warm up to it. And so eventually I came up with a name. I came up with the first subject. Then I decided one of my friends was coming out with a book, Patrick McCarthy. I said, hey, why don't you come on? We'll promote the book. Not because I want the book and I want to talk about the book.
Right.
Like, and maybe he'll sell some books. And then I quickly realized that I do a lot of traditional martial arts. A lot of the traditional martial arts guys that are writing books, like they're not going to get asked to come on podcasts because it's a
Right.
niche field. There's not, so now I have these guys coming on and they're saying the same thing. Like, Mike, you don't understand. You're the only guy that's doing this kind of stuff for martial arts. So initially when I started it was just me talking about stuff, right? And now it's morphed into something else. And I have a one coming up with a guy who just wrote a book on Ishinru karate, which is the style I started with and still
Mhm.
practice. And then I have a few other things coming up in the works that I'm going to be interviewing people. And then I'm on a podcast this coming Thursday. So
There you
so
go.
yeah, but I appreciate you coming on
I
and
appreciate it.
maybe we'll do it again in the future.
Would love to.
All right. Take care. Hope you enjoyed my interview with Wayne Walker, hypnotist. Okay. I had a lot of fun talking to him. I really enjoyed it. Okay. And one of the things I try to do with this podcast is I want to interview people a little bit outside the box. I don't want it to just be all about martial arts. I want to give some different perspectives on things. So hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. You know, details section of the video will be how to contact Wayne if you think maybe he can help you with some stuff, whether it be your diet, smoking, fears you face, whatever. Listen, if you've exhausted everything else, why not give hypnotism a try? Okay, we got to keep open minds, all right? So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next video. And please click that like button, share, subscribe, okay, consider becoming a member. Helps me tremendously. All right. Take care. We'll see you in the next one.